Thanks, everybody. I've been everywhere today. I was in Reno a little while ago and flew down. I want to make sure we did this, so our flight turned out to be an hour and a half later than we were supposed to be. Hang on one second. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. A little higher.
A little higher? How's that?
Good.
Okay, good. So, all right, make sure I trip over this thing. Well, thank you very much. So I made a good time. If you guys know, back in the campaign, I'm still, I believe, the only candidate to ever qualify in all 15 Arizona counties. And I thought we built in a day cushion. I like to be early for everything. Oh. You learn that campaigning. After too many pictures in the paper of this. The mid-talking shots. So, early on in the campaign, I promised to qualify in all 15 Arizona counties because as I would travel the state, everybody would say, are you here for all of us or just the great state of Maricopa? And so I made the commitment, not realizing how difficult that would be. So to qualify for a statewide ballot takes 5,651 signatures in 3 counties. So basically 0.5% of Republican voters in 3 counties, with Maricopa being one of them. And what most candidates would do is they would get Maricopa, and then they would get La Paz and Santa Cruz County, the 2 small ones, and be done with it. And so I went around, and I wanted to do this to show everyone I was here for everybody. We were going to turn our signatures in the day before they were due, we went to turn them in. And my campaign, we didn't have a consultant in the campaign and all the staff or anything. It was just myself and some friends, and my wife was the campaign manager. And one of our friends, we was 15 Arizona counties, we basically had 5 of us, and we all counted 3 counties. So we're at the Secretary of State's office, no joke, this is 3 o'clock the day before they're due. We're at the Secretary of State's office, handing them in, and we realized that Mojave County had been miscounted. And we were short 107 signatures in Mojave County. And they're all like, oh, just turn them in, you did great, you got 14. It's better than anyone's ever done. No one's ever done, I think, more than 7. It's better than anyone's ever done. And I'm like, no, I promised I'm gonna do 15. We're going to do 15. Like, how do you think you're going to get back here in 24 hours from Mojave with 107 signatures? If you know how hard it is to get 107 people to sign your petition in that short a time frame. But, so Sean and I jumped in the car. I raced up to Mojave. I was door knocking. We started out door knocking, and I found the ultimate way, by the way. Great tip for candidates. The houses that treat you the best, there is a distinguishing feature about these houses. And it's going to sound obvious when I say it, but I guarantee you, they all have an American flag out front. And that's what you realize. The houses that didn't have that, I had, everything you could imagine, right? But I found the pattern, and I started targeting the houses that had the flags, and it went really well. And one of the last houses I knocked on that night, it was getting late. It went till about 8:30, to the point where, people get kind of upset. Even if they like you, they're kind of upset that you're knocking on the door at 8:30 at night. They don't realize the panic you're in to get these signatures. And one of the last houses I knocked on, this really nice guy came in the door. Oh, let me help you. Yeah, it sounds great. And he goes, hey, my wife's here. I'll get you 2 signatures. I'm like, yeah, let me go get her. And he says, hey, can I take this with me? I said, unfortunately, the rules are I have to see it happen. And he's like, oh, she's in the shower. I'm like, true story. And I go, shoot, I don't know what to do. He goes, hold on, I'll get her. So the poor guy makes his wife get out of the shower. She comes out with a towel on all wet. I felt so bad, right? I'm at this guy's house at 8:30 at night. She comes out the house. She's like, all right, she signs, Super nice people. So I go on. I got 22 signatures. We're short 85 signatures still. And I went till like 11:30 at midnight. I was going to gas station attendants. Are you Republican? Not many are, as it turns out. So I, next morning, got up at 6:30, and if you know Mojave County, and if you know Lake Havasu City, that's where we were, the very, very top of the main drag there, McCullough, you go to the top, and that's kind of all the businesses wind down this road. They're all the, so we started at the top, and there was this little coffee shop. And I go early in the morning, got about 7 signatures there, and so Sean was back with me, and I said, you go keep knocking on houses with flags. I'm going to try going down the business road here and see what happens. So, just by the grace of God, the first business I go in, right across the street from the coffee shop at the top, was this radio station. And I'm like, well, they're early. It was like 7:15, and I knock. So I go in the door, and this little bell rings, and they don't notice I'm there. And I hear a voice from this next room. This reception counter's empty. And you're going to think I'm making this up. This is a true story. I hear in the other room this woman on the phone. She's like, you're not going to believe it. So I'm in the shower, and my husband, he So hang up the phone. It's like, what are the odds, right? So this nice woman takes me through all these, she knows everybody around, and she's walking me through these businesses. And right next door there was this insurance company, and 30 people working there. And she's walking me, past reception, right into these places. And are you Republican? Are you Republican? So in like an hour, I got, I think, 35 signatures. That made it doable. Now I got 50 to go. And we figured I had to get on the road by about noon to make it back in time. And went down, all the accountants, the insurance agents, insurance agents, and lawyers were great. They'd walk you through. So we got it, but it was about 1 o'clock, and we made the run from Lake Havasu City, usually 3.5 hours. But we got back, we turned it in, so I beat the number. I should beat the number. So I got more than the required number in all 15 Arizona counties. I turned in, with about an hour to spare, 16,702 signatures, when the minimum was 5,600. So I love, because now I can say I've qualified in every single county, including Yavapai County, and I'm here for everybody. I'm here for all of Arizona. So it is my goal to see us make the smartest financial decisions as a government that we can make. So if you know, I've never run for anything in my life before I ran for this job. I've come to these rooms, I've sat in these chairs for so long, and I've supported good people, and I've supported people that turn out to not be good people. And a lot of times you get disappointed. And what I've noticed is so many times we support someone that starts out good, and they get down there and all of a sudden they become part of the machine and they're not making good decisions anymore. And so I just had this time in my life. If you know, I started in the financial business in 1992, and I used to trade in exchange flow in the 90s. I started a successful investment firm in 99, basically a market making firm, and we grew to over 500 licensed professional traders doing over 1 billion shares a month. I sold that in 2013, and some people came to me and talked me into it. To tell you the truth, I'd never in my life thought of running to be the treasurer. But when I looked at the two other gentlemen that were running, they didn't know money. And so I thought, well, the main competition, who would be the treasurer right now if I hadn't run, was a lawyer and a long-time politician. And so I thought, I don't think that's going to be great. Let's see if I can make a difference. So I've been down there trying to make a difference. And I'll tell you, it's a very unique insight you get when you get to see inside the machine. And you get to see what happens to people when they get down there and why they start making the decisions they do. And the number one thing is, the problem most politicians have is the biggest thing in their lives is winning the next election. And that's where you see them make, and there's a kind of a theory, I kid you not, this is a theory in government, that if you want to win your next election, do as little as possible. Because if you don't do anything, you're not going to upset anybody, and when your name's on a ballot, they're going to check the box again. And so we have to start not only looking at when people do the wrong things, but we've got to start evaluating when they just do nothing. Because there are a lot of people down there, they do these things that make us feel good, and little things here and there, and they'll say they run bills, and they'll run a bunch of bills. But look at what they actually do, and look at how they vote, too, at other bills, and which ones they kill in committee. When you watch some of these things, some of the people we think are conservative and they're looking out for us, it's not the case. So I have been out there and I've been calling people out when they're not doing the right thing, and so I'm somewhat unpopular with some of the people down there, if you haven't noticed. But I just feel we have to do the right thing. We have to make better decisions in our government and everything we do. So I know the hot topic of 1, 2, 3, but I want to share one other story with you because it's a story I just love, and it's something more recent. Is when I first got in office, if you ever walk into the treasurer's office, right by the reception, you're going to notice we have this wall of treasurers. I'm the 33rd treasurer of Arizona, and sometimes I like reflecting this wall, and I got down there and I thought, I'm kind of curious, of the 33, how many are still around? We have 8 living treasurers right now. And so we call them up. I said, let's do an ex-treasurer day. I want to get everyone down here. Let's talk to them. Let's see if we get any input, anything like that. I'd like to see, what everyone's about. And so the biggest financial day, as we all know, is April 15th. And so I thought, let's get as far away from that as we can as possible. So we went exactly the opposite of the calendar, and on October 15th, we had ex-treasurer day, right at high noon. I thought, okay, this is Arizona, I'll do high noon. And so we had this, had almost all of them come down. It was a really neat thing. The oldest living state treasurer in Arizona, this wonderful guy, was actually the treasurer in the 60s, if you can believe that. Served in the 60s. He's still going strong. He's in his 80s, lives in Tucson, Morris Herring. And my favorite part about Morris Herring, the guy is I think he's upper 80s, sharp as a tack, and a hilarious guy. His job before being the state treasurer of Arizona, and again, you're going to think I'm making this up, true. Think about Arizona in the 60s. His job before being state treasurer, he was a bullfighter in the Tucson rodeo. That is a true story. And we talked about how perfect is that for handling the legislature. So you keep doing that to me. You're going to catch me with those weird shots, aren't you? So I've had those. No, yeah, I know you're great. You know who does that to me is the Republic. I've sent them better pictures. If you ever see the pictures they use me in the paper, it's almost like I'm missing a tooth or something. I don't know what they do with that picture. And I'm like, can you please use any of these other pictures? And they still love that picture. I don't know what it is. They zoom in on my face and there's like, I don't know. So we had Bart Fleming come down, Ernie Garfield, his early 70s, so 70, 72, then 72 to 74. All these guys, it was really neat to get. Carol Springer was there, Dean Martin was there. Carol Springer, is president, so she lives up here. Great treasurer for us. Actually, still the only woman to serve as state treasurer. So, and she did a great job. So I'd like to see if we could get more representation like that. So they all went up and told stories. We said, all right, we had the staff there and they went and told stories. And I'll tell you my favorite story, because I just love this story, to come out of ex-treasurer day, is, I'm it's called third in line of succession to be the governor. I've been the governor of Arizona twice officially. I don't do anything as governor. But think about Arizona 100 years ago. We become a state when the governor would travel over state lines back in 1912. It's pretty tough to get a hold of him if something happens. And so, okay, the power of the governorship falls on the Secretary of State. Now, if Secretary of State goes over, then it falls on the Attorney General. And if they're all three gone at the same time, it actually goes to the State Treasurer. So, again, you don't even do anything. They don't even tell me when it happens. You kind of have to figure it out by watching their social media and things. The first time it happened, the newspaper called me. They said, did you know you're the governor right now? I said, no, I actually didn't. And I said, what, are they afraid they're going to come back to Jeffazona? They don't want to tell me? So we're talking about this with the other treasurers. It's kind of a thing. I didn't realize it's a thing for all treasurers. You want this to happen at least once while you're treasurer, just to, I guess, have the bar story to tell your friends, that you were the governor once. And so Bart Fleming says, oh, let me tell you my story about when I became the governor. He says, well, I'm near the end of my term, and I only have a month and a half left of my term, and I'm getting worried that it's not going to happen for me. He goes, man, I thought, I'm not want to be, I want this to happen. I want to be the governor. So he says, he gets a phone call at 10:30 one day, 10:30 in the morning, that he's the governor. The other three were gone. He's the governor until 5 p.m. He says, I got 6.5 hours on the governor. He says, I'm doing something. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something. He says, I'm going to go find the legislature. I'm going to go right in the middle of them and say, hey, I'm the governor. I'm going to go mess with them, And so he says, he looks at the legislative calendar. He says, true story, they're touring the state mental hospital. And so, it's the early 70s. They would do a yearly tour down on Van Buren, the old state mental hospital. And they toured this thing and said, okay, so they're there. They got there at 10. And they're there till 11:45. They're going to board the buses. They're going to come back to the Capitol. And then they're having this lunch where they talk about what they saw. He's like, somebody drop me off at the state mental hospital. I'm going to find them and I'll just ride the buses back. So he gets someone to take him down there. So he's roaming. He actually finds the group. If you know the state, had these long hallways and stuff. He said he's going down, finds the group. He's in the back of the group. He says wandering through. He says, but he never got the right time to say it because they're really deeply engaged in this thing. And he heard that he just missed something cool. So he said, I kind of wandered off. I heard there was something cool I just missed. So I wander off and I'm seeing things and looking around. He goes, I lose track of time a little bit. I look down at my watch. It's 11:45. I'm like, oh no, they're getting on the buses. I don't have a ride back. So then he says he can't find them. He's running down the hallways. He can't find them. He says he sees a door with daylight on the other side of it. He goes, I open the door. He goes, I see a row of people getting on a bus. I get in line. I get on the bus. He says, he sits down. He says, a guy gets on the front with a clipboard and starts going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He goes, who are you? And he says, oh, I've been waiting for so long for someone to ask me this. He says, stand up. And I say, well, I'm Bart Fleming. And normally, I'm the state treasurer. But right now, I'm the governor. And the guy says, all right, sit down. And that was his term as governor. Well, let's get to the meat of it right now. We have to make better decisions as a country. One thing I like to look up, the United States Treasury Department actually puts out numbers for tax collections as a whole. As a country, the federal government takes in about $3.3 trillion in taxes. They actually are taking in, every quarter right now, they're actually taking in right now, tax collections are up, taking over $1 trillion a quarter right now, $1 trillion. Highest in United States history. So you know when Obama gets on and he says, we're not collecting enough taxes, we're collecting more in taxes from our citizens right now than ever in the history of our country. 3.3 trillion is the federal cut. States take in another 1.9 trillion, and then local governments take in 1.4. If you add it all up, it's about $6.6 trillion a year that all of the governments take in taxes. But if you go back just to the federal piece, last quarter, think about this, took in over $1 trillion. We still ran a $200 billion deficit. So is the problem we're not collecting enough taxes, or is the problem we're spending too much money? We're collecting more than ever in history, and we're running hundreds of billions of dollars in deficits. It's terrible. We have $19 trillion in debt in this country. The deal they just made is going to get us over $20 trillion. That deal they just pushed through right now, a month ago. We're doing things wrong. We're doing things wrong as a country. We're taxing our citizens to death. We have to do things better. So now we have to look at how do we make better financial decisions? How do we force our government to do it? We try electing good people, but at the same time, we have incumbents that a lot of cases, many of the people that I go talk to don't like, but they put their name on a ballot, they get elected no matter what. Because so many people don't really take the time to learn the issues and learn what's going on. So we have a problem where even the bad people, we can't get them out. But when you look at, whenever our politicians come along, this is one thing you realize real quickly, and they say, guess what, everybody? I have the greatest news ever. I have found a way to spend more money that's not going to cost taxpayers anything. It's one of two things. They're either taking on debt, because that allows them to say that. No, say, you add $1 trillion to debt, the politicians will tell you, we found a way to spend $1 trillion more, and it's not going to cost you anything. Well, they're lying, because it's going to cost us something. It's just not going to cost us anything right now. But we're going to start paying interest right away on it. What it's going to cost is our grandchildren. I don't know if you saw, I've done about 7 CNN interviews in the last week. And in a couple of those interviews, I've said, one of the problems and one of the things, we have some candidates running right now, including the one that I'm the chairman for in Arizona, which is Donald Trump, who's scaring the heck out of the political establishment. And I go on to say, yes, the establishment is scared because they've been making money for a long time at the expense of our grandchildren. And if we put up someone that's not corruptible, what do you get the guy that has $10 billion? I mean, really. And if we put up someone that's not corruptible, that's going to throw this whole game off that the establishment's playing. And so we have to do things differently. But the other thing they do, I said, there's two things that a politician does. One thing is they're taking on debt. The second thing is they're raiding a trust fund, a la the Social Security Trust Fund. You'll hear it get talked about a lot in the presidential race right now. Our Social Security Trust Fund has been raided and raided and raided. If we never would have raided that fund, if you could go back decades, you'd have all that money, you'd put it back in, we would have so many less future problems on our hands. But they keep raiding it, raiding it, raiding it. This last deal they just made raised another $150 billion from the Social Security Trust Fund. No one even talks about it. No one even notices that stuff. It happens so commonly. And it's kind of this weird environment right now when we even can say $150 billion and almost we're so immune to it, like, oh, that's nothing compared to all the crap they've done already. So it's weird, isn't it? It's almost to the point now it doesn't have a T on it, $1 trillion. And that's what the government keeps doing to us. So they keep raiding Social Security Trust Fund. They're going to bankrupt it. It's pretty much bankrupt. Look at our debt, $19 trillion. If we magically, let's say tomorrow Warren Buffett came out. He said, hey, everybody, I got to tell you something. I've been lying on my taxes. I actually have a net worth of $20 trillion. And I'm going to give it to the United States. We're going to pay down the debt. I feel so bad, I'm giving the whole thing as a penalty. We'd feel really good. Like, oh my gosh, did we really just pay off our national debt? But you know what? We'd still be in really bad shape. Because if you add up the obligations that we've promised to our citizens, it's over $100 trillion more we owe. In some estimates, it's over $200 trillion. I've heard some estimates that the amount of money we owe to future retirees and everything else is about $180 trillion. And there are some estimates that if you add up the entire wealth of the world, that's only about $110 trillion. So there are actually legitimate articles written out there saying we've promised more to our future citizens than is all the wealth in the world. So what's going to happen for them? I'll tell you what happens for them. I carry it with me all the time. There's actually the answer. We've already seen it happen. Do you guys know what the largest denomination currency ever printed in human history is? Anyone know?
Trillion Zimbabwe dollars?
Yeah, close to the trillion Zimbabwe dollars. They went further and they printed the $100 trillion bill.
Zimbabwe?
Zimbabwe. You're right, yeah, nailed the country. $100 trillion bill. This is a 2008 series. $100 trillion. I have $100 trillion. I carry $100 trillion with me at all times. Now, if you go back about 40 years, $1 US was worth about $1.50 Zimbabwe. Right now, 5 of these will get you a Pepsi. That is the cost of overpromising and bad financial decisions. I'll pass this around if you guys want to look at it. Pass that around. It's kind of a neat thing. That's the $100 trillion bill. Now, in Zimbabwe, it's pretty much toilet paper. But on eBay, it still costs you about $20 to get one of those. So, if you ever want one, that's where you go. But it's a great example. It's a great example of the cost of bad financial decisions. So we have to do things better. I've been down there. I've been preaching it. We've got to make better decisions. Unfortunately, June 4th of last year, a plan was unveiled down at the Capitol to raid the trust fund that I manage, which is the Schools Endowment Trust. Now, to give you a background on Schools Endowment Trust, and that's what tying into what's coming up with Prop 123. The Schools Endowment Trust, this was created back in the 1700s. We weren't a state then, but the whole concept of this was created by our founding fathers. This goes back to Thomas Jefferson, all these things. One of the founding tenets of this country, and you go back to the Federalist Papers and such, is that we wanted our children, every child, to have the opportunity to get an education. One of the big complaints of our founding fathers that in Europe, only the children of the elite could get an education. They wanted it to be different. So what they did is, when they created the Enabling Act, when they added states to the Union, they said, okay, past the original 13 founding colonies, as states come into the Union, we're going to grant them certain lands. And they're going to sell these lands, they're going to put them in a trust. And they're going to use this trust to then educate children. Now, the rules are, can't spend principal. Anyone here knows retirement accounts, you save money, everything else. Big difference between principal and interest. So principal they designate as corpus. And that applies to the land or the money you get when you sell the land. You lock it up, you don't touch it, you let it grow. Use the interest, you protect against inflation, use the interest to educate children. And they knew this wouldn't be the main source for hundreds of years. But over time, this is going to add up. They're planning for the future here, and it would grow. It's not going to start right away, because you're only using interest. So throughout the 1800s, many of the states blew their endowment trusts. They all started with them, but only the western states, some of the states have these things now. And so in 1905, Congress commissioned a report. Congress was upset about what had happened to all these things. They commissioned a report. It's about 450 pages. You can get it online. It's actually kind of fascinating. For a financial geek like me, it's fascinating to read. For some people, it'll put you to sleep pretty fast. But they went state by state, and they looked at why. Why did so many states blow these endowments? And to paint it with a broad brush, it came down to either sweetheart deals with a legislature and a developer or a governor and developer. Sometimes they would sell this premier land, like one-on-one Scottsdale type land, for $1 to their friend. 1800s, rife with corruption in a lot of governments and things. And so Congress said, all right, we got to put an end to this. We're going to put stricter rules on it. The rules that we agreed to, and New Mexico agreed to, if you know, Arizona and New Mexico almost entered the Union as one giant state. And it came down to a vote of the people, and we split into 2 different states right before. And it actually was a pretty narrow margin that vote went through at, or we would have been one giant state. But the people already that were here in Arizona, the people in New Mexico, felt they were different enough from each other, they wanted their own states. So when we entered the Union, and they entered the Union, we both got these enabling acts. Now we have a much bigger population than New Mexico, and you think we do better than that. Our endowment has grown to about $5 billion. We have $5 billion in this thing that I manage right now. Right now, my job for you, I manage $13.5 billion in assets. And I also oversee $31 billion a year in inflows and outflows. That's what I'm managing for the job that you've given me right now. And New Mexico, though, their endowments have grown. Their endowment, they've split it off into 2, but they have about $19 million out of both endowments. $19 million. They do a couple things differently than we do. They got into the stock market about a decade before we did, and they put their revenues, their leasing revenues, I think, into the trust. We spent them. So this was a deal done. In fact, the Attorney General that first wrote the opinion that allowed the lawmakers to start spending the money instead of putting it into the trust, that from lease revenue and all that other revenue that gets derived. Can anyone name the financially illiterate Attorney General we had at the time that wrote that opinion? And I'll tell you who was the treasurer then that fought it tooth and nail was Carol Springer, your very own, who did a great job. It was Janet Napolitano. Janet Napolitano. So she's the one that first allowed all that money to start getting spent, or the trust would be doing much, much better than it is now. So we have this money, we manage this money, we're doing very well with it. The problem is we had in the 2000s where the amount of money that got to the schools would fluctuate. And so Treasurer Ducey ran a proposition in 2012, very good one, to smooth out the revenue streams, kind of basing it on some newer trust law, and it got an even distribution to the schools. And it's worked very well. That part did very well. In January, last year, January, my first month as treasurer, so I'm chairman of the Board of Investment. We recalculated the formula as we're supposed to do, and it turns out that schools are getting more money from the trust last year than ever in history. And we just did it again in January. They're getting even more money now. This will be the first time they're getting over $100 million from the trust. So one of the talking points you will hear on Proposition 123 is that this trust is underperforming our schools. You just know that's false. Because right now, the trust is paying out to schools currently with no changes more than ever in the 100-year history, over 100-year history of this trust. So keep that in mind. And as it stands right now, with the rate at which we're growing the money, it doubles about every 7 years. We double the amount we're paying about every 7 years. So right now, Prop 123 is a 10-year plan to raid the trust. We're going to raid it, we're going to spend it, blow it in half, basically. And what do we all know too? Even though they say, hey, listen, trust me, everybody, we're only taking half. We could take more. Do they ever stop at half? What do you think they're going to do in 10 years? They're going to let the other half sit there? It's going to kill them. What they're all going to do? Well, you let the last people take half. Why can't we take half? So you open the safe a little bit and let them take out $1. They kick the door and they take everything. We know that about politics. Keep that in mind. That's how politics works in this country, all over. It's not just Arizona. It's everywhere. So we have this trust. June 4th, first plan came out and said, hey, great idea. We're going to take half the money and we're going to go give it to schools right now, and then we don't have to spend other money on them. So it's like giving them their own money first and everything. So that's not a good idea. It's not even good for schools. That's less money for schools and blows up the trust. I fought this thing. And there was a big war with the public. Oh, the treasurer says it's a bad idea. The governor says it's a good idea, all these things. Well, we beat that. We actually beat that plan. They couldn't get the votes. Every week they went and tried to get down in the legislature. They tried to take the temperature in the room. They couldn't get the votes to get that plan done. And then they went in a room. And the schools were against it. Everyone was against it. It was really good. And then sometime in October, they did this backroom thing with the schools. They got this one AEA went into the room, the governor's office. And here they were saying, okay, we opposed that, and we still have this lawsuit hanging over. And I love when we can settle this lawsuit. So for some reason, in the worst negotiation ever to take place in Arizona history, in my mind, the schools said, we don't want you to blow up the trust and give us half of it over 10 years if it doesn't and not do anything about the lawsuit. And then the governor and legislature said, okay, how about we still give you that exact same amount of money, and now it counts for the lawsuit. So instead of the schools saying, we get this, we blow up half the trust and we still have the lawsuit, they came out saying, hey, actually we're just going to drop the lawsuit and then we'll take this money. We're going to blow up the trust. And so it was a really weird thing how they got on board with this. And I've never figured it out. But they're still going to blow up half the trust. And they say, well, no, because the previous one was 10% for 5 years going to 5%. This one, Prop 123, is 6.9% for 10 years. It's so much different. I said, well, let me tell you how different it is. 10% to 5% over 10 years is $2.208 billion. 6.9% over 10 years is $2.199 billion. That's an $8 million difference. Is it really that different? And so, if you also think this is actually more money for schools, let's go to the schools end of it first. We'll take two things. You want to go to the schools end and the taxpayer end. On the schools end, you say, well, is this more money for schools? Our teachers, I want to tell you right now, we're 50th in teacher pay in this state. We're 50th. We're the bottom of the barrel. And actually, we do pay our teachers too low. I gave a speech, it was like 250 people down in Tucson about 5 weeks ago now. And they showed up, and the sense of it was there. It was very, I'm a very conservative Republican. And it was in Tucson, the Pima Library. They showed up. It was about 80% teachers. and about 15% administrators, 5% everything else. It was packed, it was standing room only. It was crazy. And I think they were all there to throw tomatoes at me, to be honest with you. Because like, why are you standing in the way of us teachers getting more money, you know? And so I had to go into it. I said, well, are you getting more money? Do you think you are? I said, look, my wife was a public school teacher for over 10 years. I have 3 school-age children. I'd love to see our schools do better. Well, it turns out, as I hear these stories, and I heard on the radio this morning, down there in Tucson, and I haven't verified this yet. I want to verify exactly, but I've had 7 different people down there tell me this. The teachers are making $30,000, they have a school superintendent that, when you add up the benefits and the perks, gets $420,000 a year.
Yeah, I believe.
Now, if you start a business, if you're selling blinds or tint, or I don't know, I'm making these things up, right? Eggs, whatever you want to sell, you can pay yourself and your employees whatever you want. But if we're trusting you with taxpayer dollars to do the right thing, and you pay yourself $420,000, and you pay all the people around you $30,000, I have a problem with that. I think everyone in here should have a problem with that. Because that's someone not doing the right thing. And this one teacher stood up and she talked about, oh, my gas has been shut off 3 times last year. I had to boil my water. It was terrible. In the same district where this person makes over $400,000. So people aren't making smart decisions with taxpayer money. We've got to solve this. I've gone to the legislature. I've talked to many people about putting limits. We could do something. I think it would be a smart thing. You say, okay, no administrator. My thing is, we say no administrator can make more than some number, 5 times the lowest paid teacher. Something like that. That would straighten out nothing. Maybe the number's 7. I don't know, whatever the number is. There has to be a metric because every year it actually gets worse. So, and then we think about schools. I said, okay, if you think this is actually more money for you, let me ask you a question. Let's say, sir, I owe you $50,000. You loaned it to me a couple years ago. I was buying a house, something, and you said, hey, Jeff, I trust you. Here's 50 grand. Now let's say you're coming back to me and say, hey, Jeff, I'd really like to get that 50 grand back. And I say, well, I haven't. I could give it to you back, but I got a better deal for you. I know that you keep your investment accounts over at Charles Schwab.
How do you know that?
Oh, do you? You look like a Schwab guy. The boots gave it away. So I know you have and I have a buddy at Charles Schwab, and so what he's done is he actually cashed out 50 grand of your IRA. And here it is. So I cashed it in and to go put it in a checking account. Do I still owe you 50 grand?
Yes.
And do you have more money?
No.
No.
No. That's why I've been saying forever, this is not more money for schools, it's sooner money for schools. If you take $50,000 out of your IRA or your 401k and you go buy a nice car, your friends are going to think you have more money. It looks like you have, hey, wow, look at that. So-and-so is driving a really nice new shiny car. They apparently have more money. No. They have sooner money. Because you know the cost of cashing in that 50 grand out of your IRA is going to be less money forever every year thereafter. So, let's get away from the myth that it's more money for schools. This is less money for schools. Now, let's talk about taxpayers. Because they keep going around and saying, hey, do you see the buttons for this thing, 1, 2, 3? More money for schools without raising taxes. That's exactly what it says. More money for schools without raising taxes. Both those things are a lie. That's a hard word, the L word, the lie word. It's a hard word to say the capital. It's true. When it's true, it's true. I say it because it's true. So it's not more money for schools, it's sooner money for schools. But on the taxpayer end, it's raising taxes. So how's it raising taxes? Well, there's 2 ways it's raising taxes. One is right now. It was heavily reported in the Arizona Public back in October. They're the first to uncover it. And right away when I saw the article, I thought, oh my gosh, is that real? And yes, it's very real. In 94 communities around Arizona, the taxes are going up. I believe Prescott Valley is one of them. Because in 94 communities, your taxes are indexed to the school's general fund. Now, part of this deal, they did this backroom deal. None of us were allowed to participate, nobody. They came out and said, we have a deal. It was like the white smoke came out, you know? And they said, okay, we have this deal. Well, how do you get, if the main person doing the deal is it wasn't AEA, it was ASBA. It was Arizona School Boards Association. Anybody here on ASBA? Okay. ASBA is the main negotiator of this deal. School boards, I'm going to tell you right now, you look at who's negotiating a deal. If someone's going to negotiate a deal for you, you want their interest to be aligned with it. I don't know if taxpayers' interests are truly aligned with the school board association. I don't. And the other thing is, the funny thing is, I don't think many teachers would say that the teachers' interests are aligned with school board association. They're kind of their own niche. of school board people. They seem to prefer the $420,000 people. So they come out, they say they have this deal. What do they want? They want no accountability. If you go back to the early 2000s, taxpayers were so upset then about teacher pay, they created what's called the Classroom Site Fund. So there's different buckets we can put money in down at the legislature. Well, there are requirements right now that certain amounts of money have to go into what's called the Classroom Site Fund. That's the closest we can get as taxpayers to forcing that money to be spent on our kids and our teachers, is to put it in that bucket. So we want as much money there. And if you want more money to go to your teachers, you're going to fight to get more money in that bucket. And they keep going around this deal. They say, look, we're going to raise the fund, we're going to raise taxes, but it's going to help teachers. Well, if it's going to help teachers, why are you taking it out of that bucket? That's the question everyone needs to ask. Because as part of this deal, they're taking money out of the Classroom Site Fund bucket, and they're putting it into the school's general fund. So that's why, you guys would have been there, you have a the MCRC meeting, Maricopa County Republican Committee meeting, I spoke on this. I played a tape. If you go to the ASBA website, I'm sure they've taken it down by now because I hammer about this. Did 3 videos up promoting this to ASBA members. In the third video, there's 3 5-minute videos. The third video, 3 minutes in, there's a woman who's one of the high-ups in the organization who says this. I played this little tape, just off the video, I played it. I still have it, even though I deleted it. But and it says this. The great thing, it's burned in my brain, this quote. The great thing about Proposition 123 is that there's no accountability in how we spend this money. Is that what we want to be doing right now with these things? Is it blow up our trust fund and sprinkle this money out there to these administrators who are making $400,000 and say, do whatever you want with it? That's Proposition 123. And you wonder why I'm so upset about this. The whole reason I got into government is to see us make better decisions. And they're doing this. And they wonder why I don't support this. They hammer me down there because I don't support this thing. So this is the exact reason why I'm here, is to call out the BS like this. So, they're taking money out of the Classroom Site Fund. They're putting in the school's general fund so that there's no accountability in how this money goes. The unintended consequence, and I love this. It was beautiful when I learned this because it's not what they wanted to do. They designed their talking points before they wrote the bill. If you know, the time from when the wording was first available to me, you, or anybody else to read, from that time till the time they put it into law, 9 o'clock Wednesday till Friday morning, 36 hours. When anybody could see, like they did that so nobody could see it ahead of time, go speak on it. They got the support, they hammered it through. I was down there at the Capitol, I spoke in the House, I spoke in the Senate, I said this is an awful thing, it's a terrible thing. Dean Martin was right there next to me, former treasurer, saying it's an awful thing, it's a terrible thing. All the other former treasurers, besides the one that's not the treasurer right now, are against it, saying this is terrible, we can't do this. So they got it through in 36 hours, but they designed the talking points. These talking points, they really want to go say, we found a way to give more money to schools and teachers, not going to cost taxpayers anything. I'm telling you, if there really was a way to do that, to give more money to teachers that doesn't cost us anything, I'd be for it. I'd be saying, this is a great thing, guys. I love it.
Be like perpetual motion, right?
Yeah, is it called magic? Dark magic. I don't know. So that's the thing. Everybody I know that takes the time to read this thing thinks it stinks. The only people I know that like this thing like the talking points and have never dug further into looking at what it actually does. But what if I told you right now, what if I came to you and said, hey, I'm going to do the most amazing magic trick. I'm going to blindfold myself. I mean, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to blindfold myself, and I'm going to run full speed up and down these aisles 3 times. I'm not going to touch anything. What are you going to think? Oh, come on, he's nuts. No way. So let's say I do it. I put on my blindfold. I start running. Of course, I'm going to knock over everything. Right? I'm going to knock. And it's a big mess. I'm a big oaf, and half the chairs get knocked over. So I get back up here, and I'm torn up and whatever. Can I say, well, my intention was to knock over the chairs, so I didn't. And can I go around the state and advertise? I did the most amazing thing in Prescott. You aren't going to believe this. I ran through. You're all going to say, that's a whole bunch of BS. We saw it. He knocked everything over. It was terrible. So that's unintended consequences. Even though my intention was to run through and not touch anything, the truth of the matter is I did touch things. I knocked everything over. It's not fair for me to go around and say it. That's the whole line about won't raise taxes. They didn't intend to raise your taxes. But when they took that money out and stuck it in the general fund bucket, 94 communities around Arizona are seeing their property taxes increase as a result of Prop 123 passing. That is a tax increase. Get that. Won't raise taxes off those buttons. We got to call them accountable for these lies. There's just a lie going on there. It's been in the Arizona Republic, and they still say it to this day. Yes?
Well, Jeff, the reason these municipalities may be facing tax increases is because they have their own law that sets sets their tax rate, correlates it with the state, and they can fix that. That's not something that can't be fixed. You didn't tell us that.
Well, if they want to fix it, they aren't fixing it though.
Well, if they don't, yeah, exactly. But if they don't want a tax increase, they can fix it.
Well, and this is the surprising thing for me is that they've had time to fix it. But the problem is, if they go to fix it now. Actually, I think they had till about right now, about February 22nd or so, to have enough days to keep it on the May 17th special election ballot. They've known about it for months. I've been hammering them on it for months. They know about it. They could have fixed it. They're choosing not to fix it.
Don't blame Doug Ducey because the municipalities decided not to change.
The legislature can fix it.
Oh, the legislature.
The legislature can fix it. I'm not going to blame. I'll blame either one. The legislature referred this to the ballot, and it could be a legislative fix. It could be fixed, but no one's fixing it. So the bottom line is, it is going to raise taxes because no one's fixing it. So,
And Jeff, we had a couple of questions for you on this, and unfortunately, you answered most of them, so it's not leaving us with too much. One of the things we're worried about is the massive sale of the state land assets that are around the state. And a lot of people in Prescott are joining state land.
Okay.
We already have a problem with the water levels coming up and down, and if massive development happened, how would that impact? And who would determine what parcels are sold and where, and how much would that hurt the market?
okay, great question. Great question. So, we sell on average about $100 million a year of state land around the state. Most of it's down in Maricopa. Some of it gets sold around here. All of that is determined by the state land department, not under my purview at all. I manage the money after they sell it, but I have nothing to do with the sale of that. Now, the state land department is a governor appointee. We have over 100 different administrator agencies down there, and almost all of them are governor appointees. One of the problems has nothing to do with the current governor or anything, just in general. The problem with a lot of these governor appointee agencies is that who here can name any of them? Who here can name any of the people running these organizations? They're not elected officials, and they're not held to the same standard. And a lot of these agencies don't run very well. They don't run very efficiently. There's no thought at cost control or anything else. I'm going to give you, our current governor has done a pretty good job with some of these agencies. I'm not against everything he does. I like a lot of things he does. And he is doing some things down there to combine agencies and lower costs. And those are real. I'm actually very impressed by some of the things that have happened down there. The state land department has a new head as of last May, I want to say. She's good. She's talented. She's everything like this. The problem with our state land department, one of them, is they have a preponderance to want to lease over sell with some of the land that should be sold. I say, like, if you go down the 101 corridor on the north end, that's all state land there. We get taken advantage of in some of these deals. The Princess Resort. You guys ever know the Scottsdale Princess Resort? That's on state land. That's a lease deal. And with that kind of deal, that's the kind of example where leasing doesn't work, and we should have sold the land. Because where you had multi-million-dollar developers and multi-million-dollar lawyers matched up against like a $70,000 a year bureaucrat, who's going to win that negotiation in the first end? And so they do this deal where they're already getting a really good deal on the lease, but there's a loophole in how they lease this stuff, where they signed a 99-year lease and then they prepaid it. And if you prepay these leases, it gets done at this discounted interest rate, so that the schools only actually effectively get about 66 years of that lease. They get about 2/3 of it. And so it's supposed to go to benefit the schools, but it doesn't, and it's not working well. Whereas if we would have sold that land to the Princess, we would have got a lot more money for it. And if you add up to the amount of money we make putting it in the trust and the interest it generates, it's a lot more money. And they'd be paying property taxes and all this other things that would lower the tax base for everybody, go to the schools and all that. So
Liability too, right?
What's that?
Because we still own it. We, the taxpayers,
Right.
we have liability. People get hurt, even
theoretically, it all goes
there's some liability.
to the operator, but you never know in today's world how bad it is. Yeah, but it's better. So all those decisions get made down at the land department. I would say as I go around the state, that is one of, besides the Department of Revenue, who collects the taxes, I don't collect the taxes. I'd say land department is probably number 2 in how many complaints I hear from people. And especially when you go to the rural communities where we have cattle ranching, mining, anything else, the cattle ranchers out there are up to their eyeballs in complaints about how the land department works. And part of the land department, in my opinion, you know, the job, as you realize when you get elected, the goal of the bureaucracy is to build the bureaucracy. That's what they do. They want to build it and grow their fiefdoms, and everyone does this stuff. The land department's grown to over 100 people now because this leasing and all this stuff's so big. So they don't do a good job of it. Even the people who want to buy land are complaining, the developers, that they can have applications in there for years and years and years, and they can never, no one ever looks at it. The leases, actually one of the biggest complaints I heard about leasing is our mining inspector, Joe Hart. He actually had cattle up in Mojave County, and he was having, you think of anyone statewide elected, right? Like Joe Hart, who's well loved, he's a great guy. He actually had to sell off his cattle stuff. He couldn't get his leases renewed, couldn't anybody call him back. He was going down there, and this was last summer. He was complaining about this. So it's terribly run, and that goes into when they sell land and everything else too. If you join against state land, it's a hit or miss proposition of what to expect, but it needs to be run better. I have no control over that department at all, to the point that in some cases it seems like I have as much power to get information as the general public does in how they protect some of the things they do there. And I'd like to see us get more open. You know, one of the big things that I want to know to get out there is transparency. And one of the things I hammer all the time is that the public has a right to know how the government spends every penny of their money. You should have a right to know how every single penny is spent. And I don't like it when these agencies are hoarding information and not leaving it out there and puts in bits and pieces. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. I took over it's called the Bonded Indebtedness Report as of this year. One of the things I did, because it was being run by Department of Revenue, in terms of how much money the municipalities and everything would be placing on your heads, how much debt they place on your heads. And so by this time next year, we're gonna have a much better way to do it. We had our first meeting in December. We're working on a much better interface and everything, just so you can see even the breakdown of your property taxes, everything else, how much debt is on your head. Because my thought is, if we do a better job of educating the public about the debt and the decisions that the electeds are making with your pocketbook, then you will force them to make better decisions with it.
Well, thank you so much for coming up. And for those of you that don't know, Jeff has come down here. He needs to catch a plane, and he's been invited to join in some of the festivities following tonight's Nevada caucus. And I mean, what does it say about the character of a man when he passes up partying with Donald Trump to come talk to us in Prescott, Arizona? We have a little gift we'd like to give you. It was donated by Lamerson's Jewelers, so we had to throw in a pitch there. But it's a little letter opener, and we hope
Thank you.
it's really kind of cool. And we hope you get lots of good news by opening up. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
very
coming.
much, everyone. Again, I'll tell you this, it is an absolute pleasure to serve as your state treasurer. I am fighting to see us make better decisions with your money, and I hope I'm having some impact down there, and that's why I'm coming out, and I want to make sure I come and speak to all of you, because truly, if you rely on me to fix everything, it's not going to happen. We have to team up, and the information that I give to you, you all need to tell 2 more people about. You need to encourage them to tell 2 more people about. And the only way it's truly going to work is if we can ignite a fire in our taxpayers, in our electorate, that we have to do things differently. And so I hope that what I told you tonight helps you and gives you more information and makes you more educated about the decisions they're making on your behalf down there. And I hope you start holding the people accountable that are making decisions you don't like. So send them emails, call them, do anything you can to get them to know that you're paying attention and you're going to vote for other people if they keep doing the stupid things they're doing. And thank you. And it's an honor, but it is an honor. I'm going to keep fighting for you. I'm going to keep fighting to make us do better things with taxpayer money. And if you have any questions, call me anytime. If I'm sitting at my desk, I answer my phone. And if you want to come down to the office, I have people stop in almost on a daily basis. And from there, we'll take you back. We show you what we do, everything. It's an open book down there as far as how we run the office, everything we do. We'll show you the trading room, show you the whole operation. I even show people the safe. You can see the safe. There's no money in it these days. It's just paper. But I'll show you that too. So again, truly an honor to serve as your state treasurer. And let me know any feedback you have and any other questions you have. So thank you.
State Treasurer Jeff DeWit. you. And have fun up there in Nevada today. I wish I was going with you.
Thank you, everybody.
Upcoming events for the Board of Supervisors, April 14th, the date might